De Israel, a gente vai para a Índia. A Índia é o segundo país mais populoso do mundo e um dos maiores em extensão geográfica. Nos últimos anos, investiu na digitalização do país a partir do projeto de identidades digitais, que promoveu a inclusão de mais de 1 bilhão de pessoas, ou seja, 90% da sua população, na economia do país. Brasil. Desafios semelhantes, soluções diferentes. Agilidade, segurança, acesso e menos burocracia. Na Índia, a tecnologia virou um instrumento para a inclusão social. O Brasil precisa caminhar nessa agenda. Descubra o caminho trilhado pela Índia. Ele é sócio da Aspada Investments Advisors, um veículo de investimento de capital de risco de 100 milhões de dólares. Ele aconselha o governo indiano como parte de um grupo de trabalho da India's Tech, abordando questões sobre inclusão financeira, expansão do uso de telefones celulares e privacidade de dados. Com a palavra, Sahil Kini.
Bom dia. Eu não falo português, mas estou tentando aprender. However, the rest of the talk will be in English, so my apologies. So I'm a very small man, privileged to represent a very large country. And I'm here to talk about India's digital transformation, a very bold and rapid series of events that have unfolded in the last 8 years that has changed the course of my country. I'll cut back to 2010. And back in 2010, India has 1.3 billion people. That's roughly 6 Brazils, I think. And we had 400 million people who did not exist in the eyes of the government. They had no form of identification. They had no way to get the benefits that were due to them. And these were typically the poorer and more marginalized sections of society. And back then, there was a bold idea, and the closest parallel that I can give you is maybe Eisenhower's interstate highway plan. We decided to start building digital bridges, digital roads. And it began with the foundation. And the foundation of any digital transformation, at least the Indian journey has taught us that the foundation of any digital transformation is identification. Aadhaar is India's digital ID program. It is the world's largest identification database with 1.2 billion people enrolled. Back in 2010, when I joined Aadhaar, I had the privilege of serving with Nandan Nilekani, who was the founder of Infosys, one of India's largest software companies. And he was picked by the government to put this plan in place. And I was privileged enough to join when it was just 20 people back in 2010. And in 6 years, we've gone from zero, nothing, from design, to 1.2 billion people enrolled. And we're proud to say that that's faster to the first billion than Facebook was. So big elephants can move fast. Elephants can dance. So Aadhaar means foundation in Sanskrit. And the story was quite simple. When we were deciding what to name the project, one of my colleagues who was in the deserts of Rajasthan met a headman of a village and told him about what we were trying to do. And he said, what you're trying to do is lovely, it's wonderful, because identity is the foundation of life. And that's why we decided to name it Aadhaar. We went and built on top of Aadhaar as well. We built something called the Jan Dhan Yojana, which basically means the People's Wealth Scheme. It's basically a zero-balance bank account which can be opened instantly with a biometric authentication. And this was launched in 2014, and in 4 years, we've opened 350 million bank accounts. At the same time, of course, India's telecom ecosystem is very vibrant. So what we ended up with now is this. We have 1.2 billion mobile connections, 1.19, now I think that's again 1.2 billion Aadhaars, 500 million bank accounts that are linked to Aadhaar. What that means is these are unique bank accounts, traced biometrically. 462 million internet users as a result of the increasing mobile penetration, and lots of social media users because, frankly, where else will you kill time? Then we started building on top of Aadhaar. This is a story of layered innovation. Aadhaar is a special system because it's built to be unique for your entire lifetime, but it's also built to be very lean. So when I started reading about the Brazilian context, because I wanted to see what the relationship is, I heard about the RCN, and I got the impression that they're trying to put everything into the RCN. And that would be a terrible mistake. Aadhaar was built to be extremely lean. It has only these 4 demographic details. The 5th one is optional, but not really optional. Only Brazilians will understand that. So whenever you say that in America, they're like, what does that mean? Is it optional or not optional? It has the name, your date of birth, your gender, your address, your mobile number and email. That's all. That's all the Aadhaar system it has. And it has your biometrics of your 10 fingers and the iris scans of your two eyes. You get a 12-digit number, Aadhaar number, which is unique and can be authenticated over the cloud in real time. So what does that mean? That means it's designed to answer only one question. Are you who you claim to be? If you say you are so-and-so, and this is your Aadhaar number, you give your fingerprint, it just replies with a yes or a no. That's it. And that is the beauty of this system, because now you can layer on top of it. If you try to put too much in one layer, then the layers tend to break. But you should start stacking them like a cake, then you have something very tasty. Aadhaar, to go back to the cake analogy, why was Aadhaar built in the beginning, right? If you look at government subsidies, and Brazil is a welfare state much like India. At least India is a much poorer country. We're 6 times poorer in terms of GDP per capita. So a large percentage of the population is dependent on government benefits, right? And how would government benefits be distributed before? If you thought of government benefits as a cake that needed to be cut among all the people of India, the way we used to do it before is that we used to cut it into large chunks and then give it to someone, and say, you cut it into smaller pieces and give it to someone, and eventually, very little cake would reach the end citizen, because the people along the way would eat. But what Aadhaar is that it's a scalpel. It can cut the cake into 1.2 billion pieces and give it to whoever deserves it. Direct subsidies or direct benefit transfer, that's what it was built for. And that's a job that it does phenomenally well. I'll talk about the layered innovation in a bit, but to give you a sense of how powerful authentications are, the number of authentications has grown 10,000 times in the last 5 years. And we now do 8.4 billion last year. We expect to do around 12 billion this year. This is primarily used by the government for distributing subsidies, by banks to open bank accounts and to authenticate transactions, and by telcos, again, to open accounts. And I'll tell you a few stories of those along the way. So we started building on top of this presence-less layer, where you didn't have to go to a bank branch, where only if you had a biometric terminal or in some cases for lower value transactions, even a mobile one-time password and OTP will do for you to authenticate yourself. So on top of this presenceless layer, we started building what we call the paperless layer. Now the paperless layer is fascinating because every account, if you've opened a bank account, if you've opened a telecom account, you know that you have to go with your proof of ID, your proof of address, and this is your KYC, right? And usually that involves a lot of paperwork, somebody takes a photocopy, and then, it's basically killing a lot of trees and not doing much good at the same time. So what this means is this is built on top of the Aadhaar authentication layer. So there are licensed entities that can work with Aadhaar. Using an Aadhaar authentication, it will send you not just a yes-no response, but the demographic details of that individual. Not biometric, just your name and your address, which is what you need to prove your identity. So with this now, you can open bank accounts, and you can open telecom accounts, you can enroll yourself for insurance, for mutual funds. What this required, of course, was coordination between the government and other regulatory entities. The telecom regulatory entity had to designate this as valid KYC. The RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, had to designate this as valid KYC. The Insurance Authority, the Securities and Exchange Bureau, all of these have recognized Aadhaar as valid KYC. Again, you see this is a federated system. It's not pushed on top of anyone. The regulators work with each other to adopt this system. And now it's possible for you to open all kinds of accounts with an Aadhaar eKYC, an electronic KYC. That itself accounts for a significant number of authentications, as you can see, 3.4 billion last year. Obviously, it's used to open lots of different types of accounts, like I said. And another layer of paperless transactions is an electronic signature. We've all heard of digital signatures where typically it's been a very cumbersome and messy process because it involves either a USB stick or a CD, and you're moving stuff back and forth, which doesn't really make much sense because instead of paper, you're just moving another physical object back and forth. What eSign allows you to do is use Aadhaar to digitally sign a document. So what that means is, imagine you're applying for a loan. Right? If you're applying for a loan, the first thing that you do is that you go to a branch, you fill out a form, you sign the form. And now you see with the presenceless and the paperless layer, you don't need to go to a branch, you authenticate yourself. With eKYC, you fill out the form, and with electronic signature, you sign the form. So the entire process is now digital. And eSign is still being adopted by the regulatory entities. There is an adoption cycle which picks up. Some things pick up faster than the others. eSign is still in the process of being adopted, but we're already making some good progress. But the first point makes my point, which is it took 15 years to issue 18 million digital signatures, and we did 33 million last year alone. That's because digital signatures before were, if anything, harder than paper signatures, and now it's a lot simpler. What do you do after you fill out a form and you sign a form when you're applying for a loan? You provide supporting documentation, right? You provide your bank account statement, you provide your proof of employment, whatever else that a bank would need, your tax filing data. Digital Locker is built for solving that problem. Again, this is early on the adoption curve in India, but we are quite optimistic that this will get adopted quite widely. It's open API based. It's kind of like Dropbox, but built by the government as an open protocol so that any document issuer can essentially issue this as a document. So including your university, your employer, and even, of course, public document issuers can issue this document on the Digital Locker infrastructure. So now we've already onboarded 53 issuers. You can see it's early, but we're making some progress. Some major government departments have already signed up. And you see this. This is a consensus building exercise. You have to get each and every department to sign on one by one by one. This, even if the central government issues a fiat, the rulers of each fiefdom in each department have their own ideas. So you've got to convince them one by one. So this is a stakeholder engagement program as much as anything else. So we've got some private issuers as well, and we're starting to see Digital Locker take off as well. So now we have presenceless layer, we have a paperless layer. we now built something called the cashless layer. What is the cashless layer? So this we refer to as UPI, the Unified Payments Interface. The Unified Payments Interface is a fascinating system. I've not seen anything like it anywhere else in the world. The closest parallel I can give you is that it's like email for payments, right? So I don't know how you send money in Brazil. I still have to do some research on how digital payments work here. But usually, if you have to send money to someone, you have to know their bank account number. You have to know which bank they're banking with, sometimes even the branch code, and a bunch of other useless information from the consumer's point of view, which introduce a lot of friction in payments, right? What the UPI is, the closest example, closest parallel I can give you is the SMTP protocol, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, right? The Simple Mail Transfer Protocol is an addressing system for email. And Gmail, Hotmail, whatever email you use today uses the SMTP protocol to resolve, Ronaldo at itsrio.org, it resolves it into a DNS system, and then you're able to kind of redirect saying, I sent an email to Ronaldo, so it'll go there, right? So what the UPI is that it's an addressing layer on top of a payment switch. So to send money to me in India, if you have an Indian bank account, all you have to do is send money to Sahil at ICICI, and the money will reach my bank account. And it's a completely interoperable payment system. From any bank to any bank, instant money transfer. I wish there was another Indian in the room. I would have shown you a live transaction. There is no minimum limit. The minimum limit is 1 rupee. The maximum limit is roughly now, I think about $1,500, roughly. And for any transaction below $30, there are no transaction fees. It's free. So it's like cash. It's instant, it's simple. It's like sending money to someone is now like sending email. In fact, even WhatsApp has integrated UPI. And if you guys come see me later, I can show you, I've used WhatsApp to pay money to my maid using UPI. So there is, just like you send a photo, when you hit the attachment button, there's a payment icon that pops up. I hit and I enter the amount that I want to pay, and it reaches that person inside the chat. It's quite something. So that's UPI. And UPI has grown like a weed. It now does more transactions. Last month, it did more transaction volume than debit and credit cards in India combined in 18 months. It's something else to watch, because I was there when UPI was launched. We have been involved in a lot of things that happened since then. November 8th is a date that will live in infamy for several reasons, not the least of which was that Donald Trump became president that day. But India demonetized 86% of its currency on the same day. So it felt like the entire world was turning upside down on the same day. But that ended up, if you see what happens in November there, it's the first arrival of UPI, November 2016. And then since then, it's gone crazy. So that is the cashless layer that we've built on top of it. Lots of players have kind of come on board. And now we're working on improvements to the UPI protocol, which will allow you to do electronic mandates. What that means is you can now pre-approve some biller or any payee to kind of charge you up to a certain amount with a certain frequency. What that means is loan payments, insurance premium payments, all of these can be automated once and for all. So you won't have to kind of authenticate yourself every single time. So this seamless payment protocol is something that we're seeing gain widespread adoption. Finally, we're in the process of building something called the consent layer. And this is very important in today's world, where we're talking a lot about data privacy. We're talking about who has access to your data, what can they use it for, particularly when you're talking about your personal information, your personal documents. How do you share this? What are the rules around collection? What are the rules around storage, around use, around sharing? So for that, we're building what we call the electronic consent architecture. So this basically is a system that introduces a technology intermediary whose job is to manage consent. So we've defined what we call the consent artifact, which is essentially an XML which talks about who can access the data for how long, for what purpose, and that gets attached to the document that you're sharing digitally, and ideally it should work seamlessly. We're still in the process of figuring that out, but given the kind of work that we've been able to do so far, we're quite confident that we'll be able to do so. So this is a story of layered innovation, right? If you're booking an Uber today, you're actually riding on so many layers, right from the semiconductor layer to a GPS system, which is again an open protocol layer, to the maps layer that Google built, which is now accessed by Uber to provide you with a ride, right? So you're building on 30 years of innovation, 40 years of innovation. This stack is built in a very similar model, in a very similar architecture. What that means is that we're not building solutions. We're not building point solutions saying we're not trying to solve this entire problem. If you try to do that at once, if you try to solve the direct beneficiary transfer problem and some other problem and everything in one solution, then you end up with, well, monolithic architecture, which is very similar to the kind of code that Oracle or Siemens built, Siebel Systems built in the 90s, which ends up breaking at scale. So to build systems that work at 1 billion citizen scale, or 200 million citizen scale in your case, you have to build Lego blocks. You have to build blocks that connect and build on top of each other. That's the only way this kind of digital infrastructure can work. And the beauty of these Lego blocks is that once the society starts seeing the benefit of this, platforms start giving rise to more platforms. The UPI could not, eKYC could not have been built without Aadhaar. And these systems, which are currently being built right now, the Bharat Bill Payment System is a system where all the utility billers in the country for electricity, telecom, water, you name it, will come onto this platform, and you'll be able to automate bill payments which are linked to your Aadhaar. We're building the National Health Stack, which is the world's largest healthcare system. 500 million people will be covered under insurance with the system. For that, you need electronic medical records. You need a registry of certified medical service providers. How do you do that? You've got to build, again, on top of Aadhaar. You've got to build on top of these same systems that I talked about before. We're building something called the Digital Sky program. Drones are a big problem, right? The civil aviation authorities never know what to give permission to and what not to give permission to. And different classes of drones can carry different weight classes. So each machine has an ID, you have an ID, and using this platform, you can automate permissions to fly drones. The Goods and Services Tax Network is the GST network. We introduced India's largest tax reform in I think, ever, in a very long time. What happened as a result is that we unified the entire tax system across the country. Before, different states could charge different taxes and different excise duties, but now there's a unified tax structure. What happened as a result was phenomenal. India estimatedly has about 60 million small and large businesses of all shapes and sizes. And only about 6 million were in the tax net, were recognized by the tax authorities as tax-paying entities. Last year alone, after the introduction of GST, we went from 6 million registered businesses to 9.8 million registered businesses, a 50% jump in 1 year. Our tax collections have grown by over 50% in the last year from businesses. So when you start to digitize, formalize, and build in a layered manner, it's good for not just the country, but for the businesses as well, because they now get input tax credit for the purchases that they make, that they can set off against their expenditure. So what I'm really trying to say here is, you're looking at not a hierarchical system, but a layered innovation structure that allows for multiple people to access this public system. And the whole idea behind this is affordability. Why is affordability so important? This is India's income pyramid. 15 million people earn more than $25,000 at the household level. Most people, as you can see, India is a poor country. It's something that we don't like to say, but it's true. And therefore, when you reduce onboarding cost by 10x and then 10x, suddenly you're able to reach 100x more people. This is why it's really important for India. If the onboarding cost on paper was 1,500 rupees, that's roughly $22. If you can bring that down to under $1, suddenly you open up hundreds of millions of people into the formal system. We've already seen the impact of this across sectors. We've seen it in the retail customer onboarding for banks, where opening a bank account used to take 6 days, now it takes an hour. We've seen this with asset managers. Again, transaction time to verify a mutual fund or an equity transaction has gone down from 4 hours to 2 minutes, which makes all the difference when you're trying to execute a trade, if you're not a large institutional investor. And one of the most important and interesting things that has happened is sometime in 2016, India's richest businessman, Mukesh Ambani, who runs an oil company called Reliance, introduced a system called Jio. It was a new telecom operator. A new telecom operator sounds crazy, and he invested a lot of money, about $15 billion, to stand up this system. He went from 0 users, 0 subscribers, to 100 million subscribers in 6 months. And that was because of eKYC. It allowed you to kind of bring people on board into a formal system in minutes. And your SIM would be working right when you walked out of the shop. You'll give your Aadhaar number, you give your fingerprint, they give you a SIM card, out you go, you use your phone. So, I'm out of time, otherwise I would have shared another video where we talk about a 5-minute loan, which is again something that is now possible, but I've already kind of talked about how that would work in this. So the story what I have to kind of leave you with, what I have to leave you with is when you start embarking on this digital journey, think about how you can build lean platforms as layers, one by one, and begin with the government and begin with beneficiary transfers, because then the argument is quite clear to everyone. Thank you so much. And
I'd like to show you a demonstration of our IoT platform for operating smart connected products on the web. I'm going to demonstrate this using the simplest consumer product, a light. I want to explain how to connect your products to your consumers, but to do this in a way that also connects to all the other smart products and services in their digital lives, like for instance, a Nest thermostat. This light is connected to the web by Wi-Fi. It's talking to the Everything Cloud platform using the MQTT protocol, but it could be using any chipset platform or any networking technology you choose. Our software platform is basically independent of the hardware and network technology in your connected product. Let's say I am the manufacturer, setting up a unique identity for my light in the Everything system. I have a dashboard of all my products with live data associated with their use and performance. The digital identity of this smart product has a number of properties. These properties are dynamic, so anything that changes in relation to the product feeds back live data and shows up instantly on the dashboard via web APIs. Say now I'm testing a light sensor that comes with my smart lamp, so consumers can automatically set it to switch on when it gets dark. When I cover the sensor to cut off the light, you can see that the lamp switches on. And also, I can see the live data values of the lamp being updated in the dashboard. We can also program algorithmic logic into the live product data using our Reactor rules engine. This is an example of JavaScript code running in the platform's rules engine, using data from the product and from other sources on the web too. For instance, that could be used to drive a home automation system or to push notifications and alerts. As a consumer, I can have an app to interact with my light. This web app has been created using JavaScript and HTML. It talks to the online identity of the lamp using the Everything Web API. Everything provides these APIs and SDKs to make it super easy for any developer to build apps for your connected products. So consumers can interact with their smart products like this. Achieving scalability while maintaining performance for connected products is critical for success. With the Everything IoT platform, you can scale your devices while maintaining a low latency. For example, sub 500 milliseconds. Smart products use different end-to-end protocols to communicate. On the other hand, apps use web protocols like REST and WebSockets. The Everything Real-Time platform allows these different products and applications to talk to each other securely. Smart products exist in a sophisticated ecosystem of other connected devices, apps, and business processes. To add most value to the consumer, your smart products need to communicate and share data with all these things. Everything lets you make these cloud-to-cloud ecosystem connections and control the data flowing between them. Specific cloud-to-cloud integrations are treated as plugins and are simple to implement. For example, here is the Nest I showed you before, now added to the list of devices. Another simple bit of JavaScript in the rules engine, and now the Nest can control the light, and the light can send instructions to the Nest. For example, telling it to turn the heating down when the lights are switched off as you leave your house. Everything provides an Internet of Things cloud platform to make your consumer products smart. It uses standard-based protocols and web technologies for application development and data exchange. It's highly scalable and highly secure, and it manages the ecosystem connections between many devices, protocols, and clouds. In other words, everything gives you access to the full business potential of the IoT when you make your products smart.